For decades, Lee Van Cleef was remembered as the man with the unforgettable face, sharp features, watchful eyes, and a presence that could dominate the screen without raising his voice. Yet late in life, when interviews turned reflective rather than promotional, Van Cleef finally addressed the figure most closely linked to his cinematic legacy, Clint Eastwood. His words were not charged with rivalry or resentment, but with clarity shaped by time. Van Cleef understood that audiences love to imagine conflict where none truly existed, especially between two men who helped redefine the Western genre. What he offered instead was perspective. He acknowledged that their paths intersected at a crucial moment, but they were never the same road. In speaking honestly, Van Cleef did not diminish Eastwood's achievements, nor did he elevate his own. He simply explained that two different actors, carrying different histories and energies, fulfilled different needs in the same cinematic moment, and that contrast was exactly what made their collaboration endure. Roots forged in discipline and survival. Lee Van Cleef was born Clarence Leroy Van Cleef Jr. on January 9, 1925, in Somerville, New Jersey, during a period when economic hardship shaped character early. Growing up in the shadow of the Great Depression, he learned independence not as a philosophy, but as a necessity. Structure and self-reliance became central to his identity, values reinforced when he later served in the United States Navy during World War II. Military life sharpened his respect for order, restraint, and responsibility, qualities that would later define both his screen persona and professional reputation. After the war, Van Cleef approached acting with seriousness rather than illusion, studying theatre and treating performance as a craft to be earned. When he debuted in High Noon in 1952, his role was small and nearly silent, yet his presence lingered. Even then, he understood that success would not arrive quickly, and he prepared himself to endure. A career built on persistence, not privilege. Throughout the 1950s, Van Cleef worked steadily, but rarely prominently, appearing in dozens of westerns and television series where his unconventional appearance placed him in supporting or antagonistic roles. Rather than resisting this casting, he refined it. He learned to communicate threat, intelligence, and restraint through posture and timing rather than exaggerated motion. These performances rarely brought fame, but they built reliability. A serious car accident in 1958 briefly derailed his momentum, and for a time, it appeared that Hollywood might never fully recognize his potential. Instead of surrendering to disappointment, Van Cleef adjusted. When American opportunities slowed, he remained open to change rather than clinging to familiarity. That openness became his turning point. As European filmmakers began reshaping the Western with darker themes and moral ambiguity, Van Cleef found himself uniquely suited to this evolving style, not by reinvention, but by finally being seen for what he already was. Italy and the role that changed everything. Van Cleef's collaboration with Sergio Leone marked the transformation of his career. Cast as Colonel Douglas Mortimer in For a Few Dollars More in 1965, he stepped into a role that finally allowed complexity and authority to coexist. Mortimer was neither hero nor villain, but a man shaped by loss, memory, and discipline. Van Cleef's performance was restrained, deliberate, and deeply human, earning international recognition. The role placed him alongside Clint Eastwood, whose rising star was unmistakable. Van Cleef recognized this immediately, noting Eastwood's instinctive understanding of stillness and economy. Yet he never framed this awareness as competition. Instead, he understood that their contrast gave the story its power. Where Eastwood embodied quiet myth, Van Cleef embodied lived experience. Their shared screen time worked because neither attempted to dominate. Each occupied his own space, allowing tension to emerge naturally rather than being forced. Understanding Clint Eastwood without illusion. When Van Cleef finally spoke about Clint Eastwood, his reflections were grounded and precise. He acknowledged Eastwood's discipline, preparation, and ability to protect his screen image with consistency. Eastwood, he observed, understood that silence could carry more weight than action, a quality that could not be taught. Van Cleef also recognized that Eastwood fit the evolving American myth in a way he himself did not. This was not a criticism, but an acceptance. Van Cleef knew his own face told different stories, ones shaped by danger, unpredictability, and moral tension. Rather than resisting that identity, he embraced it. He believed his success came not from being the hero, but from being unforgettable. In his view, Eastwood did not overshadow him. Instead, the contrast between them clarified both. Without that balance, the films would not have endured in the same way. A private life lived away from the spotlight. Off-screen, Van Cleef lived a life marked by responsibility, transition, and eventual stability. He married young during wartime, raised children while struggling through uncertain early career years, and faced the strain that long absences and professional pressure placed on family life. His early marriages reflected periods of survival and rebuilding rather than ease. Divorce was not the result of scandal, but of the quiet erosion that often accompanies demanding careers. By the time he married Barbara Havalone in 1976, Van Cleef had reached a stage where recognition and self-understanding brought balance. Their marriage provided steadiness through the later years of his career and his declining health. Barbara remained by his side with loyalty and discretion, reflecting the same quiet resilience that defined Van Cleef himself. His private life, like his performances, was never theatrical, but it was deeply lived. Later, roles an enduring presence. As Van Cleef aged, his presence did not diminish, it sharpened. Roles such as Police Commissioner Bob Hawke in Escape from New York allowed him to bring authority and ambiguity into modern settings. Even as his health declined due to serious heart disease, he continued working, supported by medical intervention that extended his ability to perform. A pacemaker became a silent companion, allowing him to remain active in the profession he loved. He did not chase reinvention or retreat into nostalgia. Instead, he accepted roles that respected his experience and gravity. Colleagues continued to describe him as disciplined, courteous, and fully prepared. There was no bitterness in his later years, only realism. He understood his place in cinema history and did not attempt to reshape it. His satisfaction came not from headlines, but from the knowledge that his work endured because it was honest, facing mortality with the same restraint. On December 16, 1989, Lee Van Cleef died at his home in Oxnard, California, after suffering a heart attack, with throat cancer listed as a contributing condition. His death was quiet, much like the man himself. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in the Hollywood Hills, his grave marked with the simple phrase, "Best of the bad." The epitaph captured his legacy perfectly. Van Cleef did not merely play villains. He elevated them, giving depth and intelligence to characters that might otherwise have been forgotten. His final years were not defined by decline, but by persistence. Even as his body failed, his commitment to craft remained intact. In death, as in life, he resisted excess. His story was not about rivalry or regret, but about endurance, adaptability, and the dignity of accepting one's true nature without apology. The truth he left behind. When Lee Van Cleef spoke honestly about Clint Eastwood, he revealed something deeper than comparison. He revealed peace. He understood that cinema needed different kinds of legends, and that history would place each artist where they belonged. Eastwood became a hero of myth and direction. Van Cleef became a symbol of menace, intelligence, and moral complexity. Both were necessary. Neither was incomplete. In the end, Van Cleef's truth was not about another man, but about himself. He had carved his place without imitation, without resentment, and without compromise. His legacy endures because audiences still remember his eyes, his silence, and his restraint. In a medium often driven by noise, Lee Van Cleef proved that presence could be power and that dignity could outlast fame. That is the truth he finally told, and the one history continues to confirm.